Hey nerds, what's up? It's time to give you my top 5 SFF books of this year. Now, yes, I know it's December, but I always love doing this in December, and here's the deal. If I read a fantastic book in the next couple of weeks, I can just put it on next year's list. It's really not that serious. But December for me is always the month to look back, and I can't wait to talk about my top 5 books of this year. Now, before we jump in, generally my top 5 list is just a top 5 list. I don't order them. I just talk about them in the order I read them during the year because I have a hard time putting things above others. The fun thing about this year is I ended up only giving 5 SFF books 5 stars this entire year. So that kind of made my top 5 list easy. So we're going to jump right into it. And yes, I did lose my voice at Dragonsteel Nexus last week, which is why I sound like this, but we move on. Now, this first book is the first 5-star read I had this year, but is unequivocally my top book of the year. Like, I know I just said I don't order them, but this book is the top book of the year. This book immediately entered my top 10 favorite fantasy standalones of all time, or SFF standalones of all time. Maybe my top 5, could be a contender for when people ask my favorite book. I talk about Warbreaker and Piranesi standalones, by the way, not series. This would be in there. So it's serious. And that book is Windhaven by George R.R. Martin. So this was the first book I read this year in terms of reading all of Martin's bibliography, which is something I said I wanted to do. And what a start it was. I read this and was like, am I about to be blown away by everything he's ever written? Secretly, no. But this book, just incredible. I just felt like, why haven't I heard of this before? It's co-written by Lisa Tuttle. I should have said that. That was unfair of me. Windhaven, written by George R. R. Martin and Lisa Tuttle. This book is a book about a society in which they live all on islands, and travel between them is pretty difficult and slow, but they do have these flying machines, and based on reasons you'll find out in the book, they are limited. The amount of flying machines they have is it. That is all they will ever have. And so they have initiated a system of flyers who are able to quickly bring information between islands. Now, the way these flying machines are distributed and used is incredibly political and usually runs just within families. And so this is really the story of a girl turned woman who was not born in one of those families but really wanted to fly. And it is actually a series of connected novellas at different points in her life and how the society changes because of the things that she does. So it is a very political novel, quite frankly, about this society. And that might sound bad and boring. And guys, I literally couldn't put this book down. It's very funny because I usually hate little quotes on the books. They're never right. But Anne McCaffrey says, I didn't mean to stay up all night to finish Windhaven, but I had to. And I had to. I read this in 2 days. I was staying up way past bedtime to read it. I could not put it down. I was so invested in the characters and the society. Maris definitely goes down as one of the best written female characters I've ever read. I love her so much. It is totally Martin's ability to make deeply realistic, flawed characters that you just completely root for. And within this novel, there's just also a lot of great exploration of real political things in our own world, like the caste system, and really nuanced things where, there's characters you really dislike, but you understand that they're making good points. Martin's always so good at that. Martin's good at having villains not just be villains and heroes not just be heroes, but really explore that complexity. Overall, this was just such a pleasant surprise. I hate that it has a, for Goodreads, low rating on Goodreads. My only thought of that is just people went into this expecting a Song of Ice and Fire. Windhaven is not a Song of Ice and Fire. It's not that. It's a sci-fi book. I mean, it's sci fantasy maybe, but it's still fantastic. So I feel if you go in it with an open mind, and if what you like about Martin is the way he writes complex situations and characters, you're going to love Windhaven. Have I talked about this enough? I'm going to evangelize Windhaven to the end of time. I've recommended it to so many people. I was following along with Read by Kyle's reading list, even though I was planning on doing this anyway. I buddy read a lot of them with him and other people. So we have a live show on Windhaven if you want to see it. But I'm obsessed with this book, just like quite frankly, and I think everyone should read it, whether you're a fan of George R. R. Martin or not. I will say as a caveat here as well then, not a caveat, but like a good thing is this contains none of that darkness or explicit sexual content Martin might be known for. Like none of this is in here. It just doesn't contain any of that. So if that has been your concern with never reading Martin, maybe you try this one, okay? Have I convinced you yet? Book of the year, no question. It's just fantastic from start to finish. So let's go on to the next 5-star book I had this year, which could not get any more different, I feel like, from the energy I just had. And that's The Butcher's Masquerade by Matt Dinniman. Book 5 of Dungeon Crawler Carl was my second 5-star read of the year. I absolutely I just can't believe I'm here. I can't believe I'm here putting a book from the series called Dungeon Crawler Carl on my best list, but it deserves it. I'm sorry. The series is so freaking good, and The Butcher's Masquerade just tops them all so far. If you're new to Dungeon Crawler Carl, that is a lit RPG series that is hilarious, crass, and follows a man named Carl and his ex-girlfriend's cat as they have to fight through different dungeon levels because of certain situations that have happened on the planet Earth. That doesn't sound necessarily like a lot of people's tea, and let me tell you, I have a whole video. If you need to explain background on DCC and whether you should read it or not, you just go watch this video so I don't waste time. But what I really particularly loved about The Butcher's Masquerade is I felt like it really upped character tension in just such an amazing way. It really developed the characters of Katya and Carl and Donut in just such satisfying ways. And, you know, near the end of the book has this super emotional scene that I just realized, like, man, Dinniman has really created this, like, very crass, silly, ridiculous book and has managed to still make characters so grounded and moments hit so much that I am, like, legitimately moved reading this book. Just an A+ experience from top to bottom. So definitely earns a spot on this list this year. Again, next up, we are further than ever. I actually like the variety in some ways because this next book is further from ever from the energy of the last two, quite frankly, which is Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb, the first book in the Live Ship Traders trilogy. If you've been following along, you know that Live Ship Traders captured me in a way Farseer didn't. To be clear, I liked Farseer, but I love Live Ship Traders. And the first book out of the three, even though they were all excellent, was just the best to me. I love the characters. I loved the emotional beats. It's a chunky book and it made me afraid to start it because even though I love a chunky book, sometimes it's just intimidating. And instead I read it in like 7 days. I was reading like 100 pages. I could not put this book down. The emotional beats of the Vestrit family and my baby Althea, another just character I'm obsessed with, my flawed queens who are just so great, and Brashen and Paragon and all the characters. I just loved how they interacted. And I think this one is my favorite personally because I had like a couple of things I didn't love about Mad Ship, even though I gave it a 4.5. And then I also gave the final book a 4.5, which I have a whole conversation about, more particularly because of a difficult scene that I think a lot of people have mixed feelings on. So overall, Ship of Magic was like a perfect book from start to finish. One of the most hateable characters of all time contained in it. If you did Farseer and you liked it, but weren't like over the moon about it, I do just highly recommend at least giving this a try or reading the back and seeing if it's something that sounds interesting, because I feel like the emotions and the character work are all stepped up, and like particularly Assassin's Quest for me just didn't like bring the series to a close in a way that I felt particularly satisfying. I do think this series does a better job of that, if that was one of your problems. But overall, made me very excited. And you know, there was like 8 years between when I finished Farseer and started this. Will not be the case. We'll for sure be getting to Tawny Man next year because of how much I loved this book. Okay, so my next book that got a 5 stars and that I love, I have to say this. You know, last year I broke my rule, which is usually like 1 book per series or 1 book per author, you know, so we have, if I read a series I love, I'm not putting every book in that series and taking up a whole top 5 list. And last year I did a little fun thing where I broke it and put like all the A Song of Ice and Fire I read. And I wasn't going to do that again. And so here's the thing. Here's the thing. I read all of George R. R. Martin's bibliography this year. I read it all. So it can't happen again after this year. It's impossible, because if he does release another book, he's not going to release 2 books in 1 year. Do you know what I mean? Like, at this point, we know it's either going to be 1 book or no books. So this can't happen again. I need you not to blame me. It can't happen again. The 4th book on my list is Fevre Dream by George R. R. Martin. Yes, it's another George R. R. Martin, and I cannot apologize for it, because Fevre Dream is fantastic. I do not have it to show you because I've actually lent it out, because I now have to evangelize that book as well. Fevre Dream, going into it, it is a vampire novel. It's a horror vampire novel, and it's about steamboats, and there's a lot of time spent on the minutia of steamboats in this novel. So on the surface, I wasn't necessarily like speeding to get into this, and instead I just freaking loved this book. I loved it. I loved it from start to finish. This book does have something I feel like I'm always talking about wanting more representation of, which is just a fantastic representation of a platonic relationship. We have 2 male characters who just develop this deep, deep friendship, and that really understand each other in just such a way that it is written that is just so satisfying and so realistic. You just really are rooting for these characters. And I just love the main character, Abner, so much. He is such an odd character, but you just can't help rooting for him. And it also has some other, so besides like amazingly grounded characters that are unique and interesting and feel larger than life, as Martin's always do, he also employs another thing I love that Martin is very good at in this novel, which is making inanimate objects or places feel like a character themselves. And in this case, it's our steamboat, which legitimately felt like another character in the novel that I cared so deeply for. And it just feels like I shouldn't care about all this steamboat stuff Martin is telling me about, and yet somehow it's fascinating. This book wasn't perfect. I think I said, look, at the climax, there was a couple things I didn't love, and it starts slow, but I got to the end of the book, and it's one of those things where your heart is just like 5 stars. I don't even care. 5 stars. It really transported me, and I love that it transported me in such a way that it's a type of book I don't normally read. I haven't read a ton of horror, and got to be my favorite vampire novel I've ever read. Not like that says a lot, because I haven't read a ton of vampire novels, but yeah, again, I was going to say this book needs more attention, but I think of all the books when I'd read his bibliography, this one I'd heard the most of. So I'm guessing that it is not an unpopular opinion to be obsessed with this novel, but I recommend it whether or not you like horror or vampires, because I feel like it has wide appeal and is just a lot of the things Martin's already great at. So that brings me to my last SFF book of the year that I gave 5 stars. Now this one I rented from the library, so I also don't have a physical copy of this to show you, but it is Exit Strategy by Martha Wells, which is the 4th book in the Murderbot series, and the 4th novella, I should say. It's a novella. The 4th novella in the Murderbot series, and kind of the completion of the first arc, at least in my opinion. It felt like a complete arc. I don't know what the official term is, because I know there's more after it. But, I gave the first Murderbot a 4. The second one I loved. The third one was only okay. But Exit Strategy just really hit me in the feels. Oh, I hit my books. Exit Strategy just really hit me in the feels. That's plain and simple. I was like, man, I really love you, Murderbot. And there was just this scene where I actually teared up while reading it, which I was just not expecting. I feel like I had been reading Murderbot as more of kind of a fun thing, a very nice light kind of refresh between long books, since they're so easy to get through. And suddenly I just realized, man, I care for all these characters so deeply. And there was just so much funny and poignant moments in Exit Strategy. So it's one of those things where these novellas are so short, and I just recommend that they're just a great all together. So like I said, I didn't love 3. I think I gave it only 3 stars, and it goes up and down. Sometimes it gets a little repetitive, but the emotional crest of Exit Strategy is totally worth it. And I was just so glad I read them. And really, I read through the rest of Murderbot this year because of the show, because I had read the first one and just hadn't got around to getting on. And then I loved the show so much, I wanted more Murderbot, and just finished the next 3. And yeah, so if you were a lover of the show as well, I recommend picking them up. So at the end here, I'm just going to do one honorable mention, because that was a novella. So probably if I did a 6, as an honorable mention, a 4.5er was Misery by Stephen King. I read a couple more Stephen King this year. Misery is one of my book club picks that someone in my group picked for Halloween. And guys, I loved it. I really loved it. That psychological horror, man, it got to me. I could not put that book down. I was reading it making faces because it was really gross. But I really liked it. And I read some other Stephen King this year. Well, The Shining. I think that was the only one that I read. But I'm like, okay, maybe I'm kind of starting my Stephen King era, reading some more of him after it's been like so many years of reading him, getting back into him. So if you're a Stephen King fan, you can look forward to that. I'm going to probably try to read a couple next year as well. Okay, so those are my top books of the year. I'd love to hear your opinion on them. If you've read them, if I convinced you to read any of them, let me know in the comments below. As far as like a little retrospective on my year, I remember at the very beginning of the year or the end of last year, I did a video of the 5 book series I needed to start, and I just rewatched it to see if I did them this year, and I did 2 out of 5, which, hey, some progress is better than no progress. So I ended up doing Life Ship Traders and The Lies of Locke Lamora. So maybe next year I'll try to get to the rest of those, which was Cradle, Powder Mage, and geez, I already just forgotten. I just watched it. Earthsea. I want to finally finish Earthsea. That's what it was. So maybe I'll finally get to those this year. I am almost done with my George R. R. Martin retrospective of his whole bibliography. So I'm currently right smack dab in the middle of both Hunter's Run and Dream Songs Volume 2, and those are the last ones. So I'll be finishing that up hopefully like in the next week. And so that will be a video I will do soon where I just rank all of his works. And I'm really looking forward to that. I have a couple of content things for that. So that's been very fun. As far as other stuff in the new year, let's let it get to the new year. I'm just going to kind of like limp into the end of this year, maybe do some reading, at least finish my Martin stuff. And then I don't know what. Please drop below your favorite book of the year, what you want me to read next year. I probably won't listen, but I'll read it. I'll see. If it has to do with my plans, I'll let you know. And I hope you guys have a great end of the year. And I hope your reading year is better next year, or as good or better than this year. As always, if you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe. That is the best way to support me. If you want to see what I'm currently reading or reviews right as they come out, for example, you would have been knowing I've been reading George R. R. Martin all year because you would have been seeing the reviews out. You can follow me on Instagram at bookborn.reviews. Okay, I'll see you next time. Bye.